Imagine this for a second. There's like a silent, invisible battle happening right now. It's underneath every single click you make, every message, every video call. It's not sci-fi, right? It's this constant, complex dance of digital information. And it's vulnerable to unseen digital spies. So what if I told you that the actual language the internet speaks, this, foundational code that holds our digital world together, what if that was also the master key to unlocking its deepest secrets and, more importantly, defending against the people trying to exploit them? We're talking about the absolute bedrock here, the architecture that lets computers talk, share data, and well, literally build the digital world we live in. But it's more than just plumbing. It's the actual blueprint that ethical hackers, network defenders, really anyone serious about IT needs to master. You have to know it to protect against all these threats popping up online. Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take these complex ideas, break them down, and give you practical, actionable knowledge. Today, we are plunging into TCP/IP, that's Transmission Control Protocol Internet Protocol. And our mission really isn't just about you learning acronyms. It's about giving you a shortcut to being properly informed. We want to turn what seems like really dense tech jargon into clear, career-boosting knowledge, especially if you're aiming for leadership in MIS, CIS, IT, maybe even thinking about programs like those at Tarleton State's Dr. Sam Pack College of Business. Okay, so before we really dive in, if you're serious about leveling up your understanding, getting those insider tips that honestly could one day save your career, maybe even launch it, then go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to the Deep Dive, share it with anyone you think needs to sharpen their tech skills, because you really won't want to miss how we map out these hidden pathways of the internet. So let's get right into it. The core of connection. I mean, when devices need to communicate, they need a common language, right? And pretty much the universal language on the internet is TCP/IP. It's how two or more computers even start talking.
That's absolutely right. And TCP/IP, it's not just one single language. It's more like a suite of protocols. People often visualize it as a stack. 4 layers. Think of it like a really well-organized team. Each layer has a very specific job, all working to get your data from point A to point B. So top down, you've got application, then transport, internet, and finally network. Now, some folks might know the 7-layer OSI model.
Yeah.
More detailed, yeah. But for practical purposes, especially for network defense, this 4-layer TCP/IP stack is our map. It shows how data actually moves online.
Okay, 4 layers, each with the job. Makes sense. But why is understanding this stack, this foundation, so critical? Why can't we just, focus on the latest firewall or the newest antivirus? Is this layer stuff really that important for ethical hacking?
Oh, absolutely crucial. Because every single one of those layers offers a different angle. An angle for attack, yes, but just as importantly, an angle for defense. It's precisely where you start looking for network security vulnerabilities. In a course, say, like BCIS 4342, Ethical Hacking and Network Defense, understanding this stack isn't just theory, it's fundamental. Because it teaches you how to use the exact techniques, the same software, that attackers use to compromise networks. Once you see how they exploit each layer, well, then you can figure out the best ways to secure those weak spots. You learn how to design better defenses.
Right, that clicks. See how they break in, then you know how to board up the windows. So let's peel back that first layer then. The application layer. You called them front door protocols. Are these like the actual apps we use? Word, Chrome, that kind of thing?
Close, but not quite. They're the front end, yes, but more accurately, they're the protocols that the applications use to communicate. Think of them like specific service windows at a post office. Port 80 for web traffic, maybe port 25 for email. And importantly, these aren't physical holes, they're logical constructs. Virtual doors identifying a service running on the network. So for anyone in security, knowing these common, well-known ports is absolutely non-negotiable. We're talking HTTP on port 80, like I said, and maybe it's secure version, HTTPS, usually on 443. Sending email, that's often SMTP on port 25. File transfers might use FTP on ports 20 and 21. DNS, which turns names like google.com into IP addresses, uses port 53. There are tons more, obviously. But the key takeaway isn't memorizing a giant list. It's understanding that each open port represents a service and potentially an entry point. Even things we think of as secure, like SSH for remote login, run on a specific port, usually 22.
Okay, and this next bit, this feels like where the theory really hits the road in terms of vulnerability. Why is knowing about these specific logical ports so vital for someone defending a network?
Because an open port, especially if it's for a service you don't even need, that's basically an unlocked window. It's an invitation for trouble. So a really core practice in network defense is auditing what's running. Then you stop or disable any services, any ports that aren't essential. If your server doesn't need to handle FTP, for instance, ports 20 and 21 should absolutely be closed or blocked by a firewall. And as part of your ethical hacking training, you learn how to use tools, the same tools attackers use to scan for these open ports, to find weaknesses. It's about interpreting the results, comparing tools, recognizing vulnerabilities before they get exploited. That's a direct skill you'd practice, using current network and security software.
All right, so we've looked at the front door, the application layer, and how to make sure only the necessary ones are open. What about the delivery system? You mentioned the transport layer, where data gets chopped up into segments, and this is where TCP and UDP come in.
Exactly. The transport layer preps the data for its big journey across the network. It breaks it down into these manageable chunks called segments. And then it uses one of two main methods, TCP or UDP. TCP, Transmission Control Protocol, is what we call connection-oriented. It's the reliable one. Why reliable? Because it actually sets up and verifies a connection before sending any data. It uses something really fundamental called the three-way handshake.
The three-way handshake. I've heard that term. It sounds kind of formal, like a secret code. What actually happens there, and why is it a security thing?
It is pretty fundamental, yeah. Think of it like this. Your computer, let's call it host A, wants to talk to host B. First, host A sends a special TCP packet. It has a flag set called SYN that stands for synchronize. It's basically host A asking, hey, host B, you there, can we connect? Now, if host B is listening and available, it sends back its own SYN packet, but it also includes an ACK flag that's acknowledge. So it's saying, yep, I'm here and I heard your request. Then finally, host A sends one more packet, this time just with the ACK flag set, confirming, okay, great, connection established, let's talk. Only after all that back and forth does the actual data start flowing. That's what makes it reliable. Both sides confirm they're ready.
Okay, and for us thinking about security, understanding those TCP headers, all those little flags you mentioned, SYN, ACK, that's super important, right? I'm guessing attackers try to mess with this process?
They absolutely do. Think of those TCP flags, SYN, ACK, PSH for push, URG for urgent, RST for reset, FIN for thin, like the little control signals of the connection. Each is just a single bit, on or off, telling the connection what to do. And yes, hackers exploit these all the time, maybe to hijack a connection or to launch denial of service attacks. But for a defender, the real skill isn't just knowing what RST means, it's spotting the weird stuff, the subtle things. Maybe the timing of the flags is off, or they appear in an unexpected sequence. A sophisticated attacker might not just send a blunt RST to kill a session. They might try to subtly mess with the ACK numbers to disrupt things without an obvious crash. That's much harder to spot. And another huge piece is the initial sequence number, the ISN. It's a 32-bit number that helps track packets and put them back together in the right order. If an attacker can predict or manipulate that ISN, they could potentially inject bad data or even take over an active session. It really feeds into that think like a hacker mindset you need.
So practically speaking, for someone starting out in ethical hacking, how does knowing the handshake, the flags, the ISN, how does that translate into actually securing a network?
Well, understanding those fine details lets you spot suspicious traffic patterns, things that look off. Take something like a SYN flood attack. An attacker just bombards a server with SYN requests, but never sends that final ACK. They basically leave the server hanging, waiting for connections that never complete, tying up all its resources. So you learn to use network analysis tools, security software to look at these packets. Is the ISN predictable? Are the flags being used in strange combinations?
Mastering this isn't just book learning, it's hands-on. It's applying the skills you'd get in cybersecurity training to conduct penetration tests, to find those subtle weaknesses others might miss. Now, the other side of the transport layer coin is UDP, User Datagram Protocol. This one's different. It's fast, but it's unreliable. Or, maybe better put, connectionless. It totally skips the three-way handshake. It just starts firing off data packets. Doesn't check first if the receiver's ready or listening. Sounds risky, maybe. But UDP is actually used a lot. Things like streaming video, online games, DNS lookups, situations where speed is key and maybe losing a single packet isn't the end of the world.
Or maybe a higher layer protocol handles the error checking. It's like shouting across a noisy room. You just yell the message and hope it gets through, no waiting for it. Hey, got it.
Okay, so we've got the packaging and the delivery options sorted with TCP and UDP. But for the data to actually arrive at the right destination, we need that postal service, that internet layer, right? This is where IP addresses come in, acting like street addresses. But this is where the analogy gets interesting for security, isn't it? Because unlike the real post office, where mail just gets lost sometimes, in the digital world, how packets are routed, well, that reveals vulnerabilities. An attacker might try to reroute the mail, or maybe fake an address.
Precisely. The internet layer is all about logical routing, and IP addresses are the key. They're split into a network part and a host part. Now, many listeners will know the basics, but for anyone stepping into networking or cybersec, understanding the old class system, Class A, B, C, is still useful background. Class A used just the first byte for the network, leaving loads of space for hosts, think like over 16 million, meant for huge organizations, maybe early ISPs. Class B used the first 2 bytes, or octets, for the network, still supported a lot of hosts, over 65,000, common for big companies, universities. And Class C used the first 3 octets for the network, leaving just 1 for hosts. Good for smaller businesses, home networks, up to 254 hosts per network. You can think of them like different sized neighborhoods in the giant city that is the internet.
And to manage those addresses better, especially with IPv4 running out, admins use tools like subnetting and CIDR. How do those fit into the security picture?
That's a great point. Subnetting lets you take a larger network range, like a Class B, and chop it up into smaller, more manageable pieces, or subnets. It's not just for organization, it's a security tactic, too. You can create internal boundaries, like little firewalls between departments, to limit the blast radius if one part gets compromised. And CIDR, classless interdomain routing, that was a lifesaver for IPv4 back in '93. It got rid of those rigid ABC classes and allowed for much more flexible, efficient assignment of IP address blocks. It really helped stretch the life of IPv4 because, yeah, those 32-bit addresses were just running out. Which, of course, brings us to IPv6. That's the next generation. Uses 128-bit addresses. The number of available addresses is, well, it's astronomical. We won't run out anytime soon. Crucially, IPv6 was also designed with security more in mind from the start. Features like IPsec for encryption and authentication can be built right in, which wasn't the case for IPv4.
Okay, and what about ICMP at this layer? Everyone's used ping, probably traceroute, to check if a site is up or see the path data takes. How does that simple tool fit into this silent battle? Is it just for diagnostics?
Well, it's supposed to be just for diagnostics, but like many things, it can be weaponized. ICMP, the Internet Control Message Protocol, is essential for troubleshooting network connectivity. But it can also be abused. Remember the old ping of death that exploited oversized ICMP packets to crash systems? Because of that history and other potential misuses like network mapping or certain denial-of-service attacks, it's actually pretty common practice now to block or at least limit ICMP traffic at the network edge. It perfectly highlights that core security concept. You need to identify potential weaknesses at every layer and mitigate them. It's a key part of learning how to spot vulnerabilities and use modern network protection systems effectively.
So we've journeyed through how data gets addressed and routed, like a digital postal service. But to really truly understand what's going on deep down, to speak the machine's language and decode those packets, we need to get into the machine language itself, the numbering systems. Binary, octal, hex. Sounds a bit like math class.
Huh. It might feel that way at first, but trust me, it's the hidden language that unlocks deeper insights, especially in security. Understanding binary, octal, and hexadecimal is absolutely fundamental if you want to move beyond just surface-level networking. Sure, binary is X's and ones, but the real power for a security analyst comes when you can quickly look at raw packet data, maybe in hex, and spot anomalies, or understand memory addresses when you're reverse engineering malware. That's where knowing your hex and octal shines. Octal, base 8. Using digits 0 through 7. You see it in places like UNIX file permissions, that MIG777 command, that's octal. And it means read, write, execute for everyone, often a big security no-no if set incorrectly. Hexadecimal base 16 using 09 and then AF for 10 to 15. That's super common for representing large binary values concisely. Essential for looking at memory dumps, network packet contents, color codes, and web design. It's everywhere once you look.
And base 64 often comes up too, right, with encoding data.
Right, base 64 isn't a numbering system in the same way, but it's a very common encoding scheme, used all the time to make binary data look like text, so you can safely send it through systems that might only handle text, like email or in web forms. If you connect all this back to the big picture, mastering these numbering systems is how you truly interpret raw data, how you analyze suspicious code at a low level, understand memory layouts. These are skills that definitely go beyond basic network setup. They prepare you for more advanced roles, for leadership opportunities. It's how you can build specialized tools, like bootable security toolkits for different operating systems, or perform really robust business intelligence evaluations by seeing patterns in data others might miss. These are key outcomes for real professional growth.
Wow. Okay, so we've really taken a deep dive into TCP/IP today, this invisible engine running our digital lives. From the 4 layers to IP addressing, subnetting, even down to the binary and hex the machine speak, we've seen how knowing this foundation really does shift you from just being a user to being, Well, an informed guardian of networks and data.
Exactly. Understanding these concepts means that that silent battle we talked about, it's not a mystery anymore. It's a landscape you can actually navigate. You're better equipped to see the paths data takes, spot the potential weak points, and ultimately secure the systems. This deep dive into TCP/IP, it's really a crucial first step in learning how to defend against those unseen threats, how to recognize vulnerabilities, and how to report on security effectively.
Absolutely. And if you found this deep dive valuable, please do remember to like, subscribe, and share it. Your support genuinely helps us keep bringing you insights like these, insights that can really impact your career journey.
So now here's something to think about. How might really getting TCP/IP, going beyond just the basics we covered, how might that change how you approach your own personal cybersecurity? Or could it maybe even spark ideas for new career paths you hadn't considered before? Think about how these layers, these protocols, might be subtly manipulated or exploited in the everyday things you do online. What does that really mean for your safety? Think like a hacker, act like a guardian. Until next time, keep your systems and your ethics strong.